Welcome back, friends and neighbors, Chiefs Kingdom around the world. We are back. This guy is up there in Minnesota. His name is Seth Kaiser, and I'm Ryan Tracy. We're going to get into a lot of topics, including everything you can find at the Chief of the North newsletter, as well as here on RGR. Welcome. This is RGR Football. Welcome back, folks. From the Colorado Rockies out to the lakes of Minnesota, we bring you the Chief in the North, Seth Kaiser. What's up, buddy?
Man, not a whole lot. That was eloquent, and I appreciate
as good as I can get.
From the mountains. You know, there was something to it that really got me going there. Okay. I'm excited to talk some Chiefs, man. It's been a good week. Life is good. Weather's beautiful. I hear people in Kansas City can't relate right now because apparently it's like 1 billion degrees or something.
Yeah, it's. I'm up here at like 10,000 feet and it's 92. So that tells you something.
That's disgusting. It's pretty hot here in Minnesota too, but we went through our 3 days in a row of 100-degree temperatures like 2 weeks ago, which is very unusual for here. That was not great. Wife finally caved and bought a pool. So yeah. And by wife finally caved, I mean, wife basically told me we're buying a pool. And I was like, yeah, but she's like, no, we're buying a pool. I was like, oh, well, I support you.
And we're buying a pool.
Yeah. Well, what's the old joke? You know, she wanted to buy a pool. I didn't want to buy a pool. So we compromised and bought a pool. That's the classic.
And now everyone's allowed to be happy.
Exactly. And she seems happy. So I'm happy.
Well, folks, we hope that you're happy too. If you're new to us, like, sub, hit the bell notification because we do this once a week at this point. And we have all kinds of content for you the rest of the week. I hope that you're enjoying the members only content for you members. If you'd like to become one, there's a join button somewhere down below Seth's desk. And that will get you a couple of extra shows that come out from some of our members in Keys and Gooch. They are unique. They are different than the rest of us. And now that we have this crew growing, I think you guys will find something that you enjoy here. So I want to say welcome to anybody who's new. And while this is not a Q&A tonight, we will get to some of that. But I want to start with big milestone for the Substack. It was a little bit ago now this week. We're playing catch up because we're a week later. But
sure.
Folks, you can check out his written work here at this address down below on the screen. And I'm not using that Bitly shortcut anymore. But how did it go?
Shortcut?
Right? It's not a shortcut at all. It's longer than this. But how did the anniversary go? 1 year on Substack on your own.
1 year on my own. I'm following in your footsteps and forging my own football coverage path. And I know we talked about a little last week about kind of the ins and outs of this industry and what a weird industry it is to try to break into and get ahead at all. It's incredibly difficult because there's so many people. Like right now, I mean, how many Chiefs podcasts are there? At least 2.
Yeah. I mean, 1 per household in Kansas City, right?
Yeah, like roughly 1 per household. And a lot of people do a really nice job of it too. And there's so much content out there. It's just hard to differentiate yourself. So doing my own thing, it's something I've always wanted to do, but assumed I never could. But because people have been so unbelievably supportive, I've been able to. And so it's been up for a year, going stronger than ever. I'm working on a mailbag as we speak. I'm going to publish that tomorrow. I wrote about the offensive line this last week, kind of took a really deep dive, including storylines I'm expecting that I'm really watching closely. I'm working on the second year of Patrick Mahomes' best incomplete passes, which sounds insane if you didn't read it last year. If you haven't, just Google it or something, you'll probably find it. It sounds insane that would be worth writing about or looking at. And that's why I have my own site, so I can write about stuff like this. Because I have a running theory, Ryan. Patrick Mahomes' incomplete passes or passes that don't count, if you get a compilation of those, they are better than any other quarterback's highlight reel. And I'm dead serious. And the reason I started thinking about that was in 2018, I think it was the second Denver game. He had a play where he evaded 3 guys and, made just this pinpoint throw to the back of the end zone while being hit by Von Miller. And I think it was Robinson dropped it. And it was a kind of tough catch, but it was this incredible play. And it got me thinking, Cody Tapp with 6'10", he and I, it's this bit we kind of got going is he's like, man, some of these are really impressive. And that's kind of this long running conversation he and I have now, because you notice it, pay attention to it. I've already got like 11 or 12 video clips up from 2020. And so if you see one that's impressive, link one, at me on Twitter, whatever, let me know. So I'm working on that. And that's the type of thing I can do with my own site. So yeah, mncheesefan.substack.com or bit.ly/Seth really hates money. There.
I was trying to get there.
and that brings you to $12 a year forever. Every year it's $12 a year. I don't really intend on raising if you lock it in here, the price will never go up. And that's because I just want everyone to be able to afford it. The problem with having a paywall is there are some people that can't pay for content.
Yeah.
And I never want, and so I always tell people, hey, email me, text me. Well, you probably can't text me, but DM me, text Ryan, call him directly. Here's his phone number. Let me know because times can be tough and I get it, but I just never want price to be a reason someone can't read something. At the same time, if I'm going to convince my wife that I can put multiple hours a week into something, it's got to pay something because otherwise she'll hurt me.
Right.
And she's famously pretty, but guys, she's really scary. And so please subscribe.
5'4" and 90 pounds soaking wet. What are you talking about?
But she's mean. Oh, wait, this is live. She's not mean.
She's not at the office today.
No, but it's not like she's never heard of YouTube. Who am I kidding? She doesn't watch the things I do. But no, she just scares me a little. Plus, there's the fact that, one of these days she's going to hear me say something stupid and figure out, wow, I'm too good for him. And that'll be the end of it. But anyway, thank you to everyone for subscribing. 1 year, Chief of the North, going strong. I've gotten a chance to do all sorts of over 100 articles, almost 10 mailbags, multiple giveaways, been able to give away Super Bowl confetti. Got to do that again recently. I've got some ideas for some giveaways this year that I'm pretty excited about. It's just going to be awesome. So thank you for everyone. And this has been my new favorite thing, though, mailbags and this live stream, because we get to actually interact with people.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. That's my favorite thing about doing this as well. And you're right. If you're going to put a ton of time into something, the paywall helps. But that's why we keep some of this out front, so that everybody can enjoy it. And folks are enjoying it. Travis, thank you for the super chat. Very much appreciated. And folks, if you support us, we can't say thank you enough. Like Ben Broadback, who starts every show. Ben, you weren't first this time. I just want to point that out. I'm proud of you for taking your time a little bit tonight. Ben is one of our biggest contributors. Most people, if you're going to contribute and help us out, support us, please ask us something. Give us a comment that we can come back with.
Yes.
And at least elaborate on. And one of those came from Drummer. Let's take his question while we have a couple, and then we'll get into the O-line topic that I really want your breakdown on. Drummer Dude asked, and it was nice to see you the other night, by the way. Folks, if you want in on the Zoom meetings where we all join together, come in, click the all-pro level on the memberships, and that's how you do it. What do you think about Hill giving Powell some praise during yesterday's press conference? What did you take from that? I've been hurt before with OTA stuff. So I try to take some of that with a grain of salt. Tyreek Hill doesn't tend to just praise people randomly, though. Mm-hmm. He usually has a lot to say about certain things, but for him to I think he called Powell silky, right? Silky smooth type thing. And there's definitely a certain skill set with Powell, which I wrote about at the Chief of the North newsletter, by the way. Shameless plug. I need to get a bell that I ring when I do a shameless plug. What do you milk hyper now?
It's right at the Chief of the North newsletter. But he does have a certain skill set in terms of some of those short and intermediate routes. You and I talked about him at length. He's going to need to get more comfortable with contact through the route. Mm-hmm. But he's pretty comfortable with it at the line of scrimmage. And he is very smooth. He plays faster than his 40 time. And there's a reason why he had a bunch of big plays last year. People talk about him not being a deep threat. Well, he was for Trevor Lawrence. And so there is a smoothness to his route running. What I take from that is he's showing some good stuff, and that's a good sign. And I am going to reserve judgment until I see him in preseason. Preseason is where it's at for me, because even training camp is obviously more than OTAs. But preseason, even though it doesn't mean a thing about the team overall, you can finally see what players look like. Like, I mean, with some guys, I actually wrote about this again on the Chief of the North newsletter. I wrote an article about like the first time that like I knew certain players were like, holy smokes. And with all of them, it was preseason. Like Justin Houston's first preseason game, I remember sitting there like, why is he not starting? Because at the time, Andy Studebaker was starting. And I wrote about that. Yeah. And I mean, Chris Jones, first preseason game, because you can see whether that functional strength, for example, with Chris Jones, whether it translates to the next level. You can see whether, a little bit of bend around the edge and technique and speed to power. Justin Houston really had it all. We forget about at his apex. That man was a monster, unblockable. And you could see that. So I'm waiting for preseason, but it's obviously better than hearing nothing or hearing negative things. So I'm going to give it like half a point.
Okay, there you go. I'm going to answer Ben's question because it came in after his super chat, and you just pretty much answered it for you. Besides Fink, I think it's Fink, not Finky, Dieter and Kemp, who do you think will stick? Does French make it? And I'm just going to tell you, Ben, none of those guys make it. I don't think any of them do. Kemp is the only one that has a shot, in my opinion, and I think Callaway and Fountain are now in front of him. So I am not confident in anyone on that list. I think there's 3 practice squatters on it, though. So keep that in mind. That's still a job in the NFL and still somebody can get called up on Sunday when you need them. So don't take it as a negative. Claude, you're right. Like, they'll probably drop something. They probably did it 2 minutes ago as we started the show.
I would love it. I would love it if something dropped while we were recording. It would just remind me of when we were recording Locked On Chiefs and the Alex Smith trade dropped. And Chris just, guys, whoa, wow.
Folks,
and
if you have not heard that, oh my God.
I was getting like, dude, just say it, spit it out. What happened? And because I didn't have my phone on me. And I'm like, what? Just what? And and so I'm just like waiting here. I mean,
refresh his Twitter.
Look at this. Former Chief Mike Pennell signing with the Bears. That's something.
Good for Mike. Say hi to Matt Nagy for me.
Yeah. Now Melvin Ingram. I couldn't make it happen.
Poof. Julian, it was nice to see you the other night too. I did send you a tweet. Check on that in the DMs. I want to get your take on something. Let's see what else. We had one more that I want to make sure that we get to. I think it was Stevie because, Stevie's here. I'm sure Gooch is here. Our fearless mod, Aaron, is here. So everybody say hi to Aaron. He's running the show, and we might have some new developments for you as well. Who is hiding behind Seth tonight? Look, it's empty.
All by myself.
Oh, it's so cute. There is a stage right, though.
So I mean, I got a window here. Maybe someone will plaster against that. But no one here tonight. I think our legal assistant is working late, so she's outside of my office. But other than that, my wife and son both apparently had to listen to me talk long enough in previous weeks.
I'm sure they love listening to you. I think it's me that turns them away and says, "No more, Dad. We're not doing that.
you can't make me."
Okay, so let's get to your offensive line review because this is like it was big at the time. I think everybody was a little overwhelmed with the Tooney signing. I know they highest paid guard. A lot of folks feel they overpaid. That's probably true. Yeah. I don't care. I don't have a problem with it. You didn't know you were going to be able to get Orlando at the time. Ravens were being stingy. At the end of the day, that's fine. But I think when you look at all the additions, for me, Orlando's still the biggest one.
I would agree with that. Yes. I mean, it's a much more impactful position. Either tackle spot is. And they rely on their tackles to hold their own or play at a high level, better yet. And with Orlando Brown, what I'm most curious about, and we've talked about him at length, but the biggest thing for me when I looked at his film as a Raven, other than the obvious that's been talked about to death, how is he going to handle a system that traditionally has had guys taking more vertical sets, which I think you and I agreed on was more a player choice thing than just a schematic issue. I mean, the Chiefs are going to ask him to do some things differently, but it's not like they're going to say, hey, now that you're here, vertical sets only, Orlando. I mean, I know you have a really dominant horizontal, aggressive set where you can just bury guys, but don't you dare do that because reasons. That would be absurd. They've traditionally found ways to use guys as they are. What is going to be interesting to me with him is how he performs against higher level competition.
Yeah.
Eric Fisher improved a ton over the years to become an above average to good left tackle. He did generally struggle with the upper tier competition that he faced. And then certain types of guys, especially power rushers, they could give him some problems. If you go back to like 2018, the year before Frank Clark came to Kansas City, he did some stuff to Fisher during that game. Did not have much luck against Mitch Schwartz, but neither does anybody else.
Right.
So it's just worth noting that Brown is such a different type player. And a big thing for me, I think that you might see some difference is against those upper caliber players. I think you might see a little more success there.
Yeah, I am a little concerned about that. I won't say concerned because I don't know what the bookends are going to be like. But quite frankly, I think the Chubb matchup against the Broncos is going to be interesting. Because I think Chubb has the functional strength if his knee is recovered. And we got to remember the Chiefs don't play the Broncos, I think, until like week 11 or 13. It's like just before the bye or just after the bye. Right. And then they play them like twice in 5 weeks.
They do.
So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. But like functional strength-wise, length of levers, I feel like Chubb is the only guy in the division that really has the physicality to meet him.
Right.
If he continues his ascension, I think that might be a good matchup.
Absolutely. The thing with Chubb is he's got some athleticism to go along with it. I didn't see a lot of guys beat Brown just with physicality. Even Carl Lawson, who is about as bullish as it gets from the edge spot, which is funny. He's just built a little shorter, but I mean, man, he just levers guys up. It's awesome. Even he didn't have a lot of success, even when he'd win initially. Brown is just so big, so wide. He's got so much length that he'd usually recover. The guys that gave him problems were the guys with some functional strength, but also could hit that edge.
Yep.
And so I'm curious how he does against like a Von Miller type, depending on how Von does, because Von does have functional strength. Obviously, it's his bend and his burst that get the most attention because they should, because he's awesome at it. But
he's also had injuries.
He's also had injuries. Too. So that'll be interesting to me to see that. I agree, though. That Broncos matchup is going to be an interesting one because that's where you're going to get a chance to see. Mitch Schwartz traditionally probably had some of his best games against the Broncos, and it made a massive difference in how the Chiefs were able to play them. And so that's going to be something that really kind of determines how things go there.
Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting to see who backs him up. It was a couple hours ago, but they signed Darius Shepard today and let Martinez Rankin go.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Martinez Rankin seemed to be Brett Veach's Cam Irving 2.0 because he's a guard, you guys. He's always been best at guard. He can't play tackle very effectively, and they kept putting him out there. And eventually they proved me right, and now they had to let him go. I'm a little surprised because I felt like they were going to try to shoehorn him a little bit farther, but that release tells me that they're pretty comfortable with the direction they see Lucas Niang moving in.
I think there's probably some truth to that. And that could be true of either way. Either they're comfortable starting Niang and then moving him to the left side if something goes wrong, or they're comfortable with him as a swing guy with Remmers maybe winning the starting job this year. Neither of which would surprise me. Niang, and that's actually, because I know, I wrote about every position on the offensive line. And so, to go into right tackle, the best case scenario for the Chiefs is Niang wins the spot. Because Remmers is not a you win by default guy. Like, Remmers can play. Is he great? No, but he can play. Like, it's not like, oh, thank God we got someone to replace this guy type thing. And they've had some of those winners by default in previous years at various positions. And so the best case scenario is Niang wins out that spot. So here, I'm curious about something. If Niang wins the spot at right tackle and Remmers becomes the backup at right tackle, and let's say something happens to Orlando Brown, do you move Niang to left tackle and have Remmers come in at right, given the difference in comfort level? Or do you see if Remmers can play left tackle?
I think it's got to be Remmers. It's ugly. and I'll put it this way. I think Remmers is a subpar starter. I think he is an uber quality backup. That's how narrow the line is to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Niang did some work because I talked to his trainer. They did some work on the left side this offseason, but it was merely in emergency break glass kind of situation.
Sure.
I think the flip, especially that we know he's practicing so far this OTAs, he's practiced only at right tackle.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like that flipping over to left would be more natural for Remmers because we've seen him do it. Not successfully, but we've seen him do it. The question becomes, is that old argument, do you weaken two positions that way? Or do you take your chances of your rookie that hasn't been starting, guarding the blind side of the best quarterback in the league? That's the balance for me. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I don't know what the right decision would be there. I think the only way they would know would be based on what they see in practice.
Yeah.
And every player is different. You and I have talked about this. Some players can shift from left guard to right tackle, and it's really not much of a problem. Jeff Allen played everywhere,
mm-hmm.
And he just never had an issue with it. Jeff Schwartz says that he's mentioned on Twitter that gave him problems trying to do things reverse. Some guys can and some guys can't. And so we don't know what type of guy Niang is. He played right tackle pretty much exclusively in college too.
Yeah. My hope is that there's a better option behind them and that they don't have a single swing tackle in Niang, that they build up some depth. And I'm not sure who that is right now because are they really that high on Yasser Durant? They gave him more snaps last year than I thought they would. But with Martinez Rankin has been running as the backup left tackle this whole OTAs, and then they cut him today. So what does that tell you? Like somebody else they feel can do that job as well or better. But I don't know who that is.
Yeah, me neither. And that's such the difficult part about all this. It seemed early in the process for Rankin, but I mean, really, obviously, it's always going to be a bad case scenario if major acquisitions go down, like Brown and Tooney. They're clearly rebuilding the line based around those two guys.
Chad Johnson, thank you for the super chat. We very much appreciate it. I'll see if you left a comment down below as well, but if not, hit us with something and we'd like to get your topic on the show. That said you went through everybody at every position.
Yep.
What stood out to you? Like what surprised you in your own rundown?
In my own rundown, I think one thing that surprised me is that despite all the bodies they've got competing at right guard, you have a bunch of question marks. And I think it's very easy to mistake quantity of competition for quality competition. And let me clarify what I mean by that, because I don't want to make it sound like I'm dogging Kyle Long or LDT or Trey Smith or Andrew Wiley or Austin Blythe or Nick Allegretti or a partridge in a pear tree. I mean, they got a lot of people.
5 gold rings. Sorry.
And so in some of those guys, not all of them are going to make the roster. They just can't. They got too many guys competing there.
Yeah.
But that was what surprised me the most when I really sat down and wrote out a list of guys that could potentially at least try to compete at that right guard spot. There's a lot of them. And despite that, you don't have any one guy that you're like, I can't see any scenario where this doesn't go well. And I'm excluding, injury with that because that's any position. So, with Kyle Long going down with an injury, that's unfortunate because he's new to the system and injuries have been a problem for him. So that's just a bummer, right? And so we'll see whether that lasts. But even if it doesn't last, if he's not healthy again until, late August, are they going to just chuck him back in the starting lineup? Was he only starting because LDT wasn't here yet?
That's the question. Most people jump to the conclusion that, it's his job. LDT wasn't in the country, folks. So we don't know that.
And so, but really, despite all the bodies they have, that was the big thing at right guard. When the first thing I wrote is, that's a lot of names. No. And when you look at the list though, right now you've got Kyle Long, who's injured. Trey Smith is a rookie with some concerns regarding consistency and immediate fit. Now, I do think people are right that they're going to be doing a little more gap-based stuff in the run game, but Andy Reid's never going to move away entirely from inside zone.
Right.
It's just, I won't say never, because Andy Reid, he's going to Andy Reid. And that would be hilarious, just on a side note. If after 2 decades of like, usually it's like, he's just like, no, powered running, gap scheme, we're getting crazy. Because I can promise you, if they went that route, there would be at least one game within the first 3 games of the season where Clyde Edwards-Helaire would run for like 250 yards because the opponent would not be prepared for it.
And it would confirm that Andy's been listening to me for years, and he just got around.
Yep. I formation. Let's line this up and get crazy.
I can't see that.
So with Trey Smith, who people that I trust say that they're blown away by him, that's a great sign. But he is still a rookie, so you just don't know. He did have some consistency issues in college. The ceiling with him, arguably the highest ceiling of anyone besides maybe Kyle Long, because Kyle Long has previously played at an all-pro level. But so then you've got, I want to hear it. I love it.
Finish your thought, though. I don't want to sidetrack you.
Oh, no, I was going to keep going through the list of guys potentially here. Okay. But because that's where this is, to me, there's questions with all of them. LDT didn't play particularly well in 2019, was definitely down from 2018 and 2017. He's coming from a year off. And if you actually check his injury history, he's had some injury issues. Andrew Wiley struggled last year to play at even an average level. And he's played at an above average level at guard before, but not for a consistently long period of time. Nick Allegretti, he played left guard last year, not right guard, which you never know if he's one of those guys that can switch to both sides. He was inconsistent, especially as a pass blocker, really struggled with some stunts and that sort of stuff. Just struggled picking some stuff up there. Yeah. So really despite that really long list, it's kind of like the opposite of what we talk about when we're talking about like the hopefulness for Niang and Remmer's situation. Here, it's like, is this going to be won by default, or is someone going to seize this job?
And this brings me to the default part of it, right? Because Derek thinks I'm crazy. But I will tell you, and we'll see if you confirm Matt or not. And if I am, I'll shut up and I won't mention this, at least for the next couple days. I wonder if the competition isn't stiff enough at guard, as you've laid out. The question then becomes to me, if Niang is not ready to win that job, if Kyle comes back healthy, is he better than Remmers at tackle? Because part of me thinks if he is rejuvenated, he could be a higher caliber right tackle than what Mike Remmers offers. I'm not to run down Mike Remmers, but there is that possibility.
I
think I'm crazy.
Far be it for me to. Here's the deal. I don't know, right? I just haven't heard anything about Kyle Long playing tackle other than Andy Reid making an offhanded comment. And he was talking about him playing left tackle, knowing that they were trading for Orlando Brown. Just bald-faced lying to us. Yeah. Just lying right through their teeth. And so, I mean, I could see it, but I mean, then it's kind of like you add that question mark at right tackle to an extent. And so then you're talking about maybe moving Lucas Niang inside. Maybe. I think you're a little crazy.
I'm not moving Niang. I'd put Remmers as the backup left and leave Niang where he is.
Okay. And then who's playing right guard?
LDT is my thought.
Okay.
See, my thing is if Long and LDT are that good and tackle is that maybe that's what it comes down to, is if you're going to play the best 5, maybe the 2 on the right are LDT and Long. I don't know.
I could see it. I think that would be demonstrative of a few plans failing to an extent.
Yeah.
But at the same time, not everything's going to go the way you planned it out. And
I'm just grasping at straws here. I'm trying not to put Mike Remmers in the position that we put him in last year, where he had to perform or you lose. And that's what I'm trying to avoid if I'm Andy and Andy. Oh, we got to come up with a second show, Andy and Andy, something like that.
Andy and Andy. I don't know if Andy. I'm seeing a comment here. Baltimore Xanax. LDT is Andy's trust. LDT is starting guard, guys. Maybe.
Let me answer a question real quick before we continue with the O-line talk. William, thank you for the super chat. I do want to give you this. I will tell you my best 5 are clearly Thornhill and Matthew. Nothing against Dan Sorensen. But then Snead, Ward, and Fenton right now. I'm concerned about where Ward is, if he takes a step forward or takes a step back. And if that doesn't happen forward, if he does take a step back, then I'm looking at Hughes and the other guy to step in and make some progress. That's what I'm concerned about. So that's my top 5 DBs. Oh, look. Hey, Dan's going to make it here too. We'll get him in here in a second. And I thought, so one other super chat I just want to answer so we can go on with your O-line discussion. And,
Sounds good.
There's 2 more. Sorry. Any news on training camp? No, nothing yet. Real KTB. Nothing specific except for the NFL said yesterday with the COVID protocols, there will be fans at camp. We don't know anything about St. Joe specifically yet, though. So it is what it is.
Yeah, it might be maybe limited numbers. I don't know. I mean, who knows what it might be. I just really want to be back at training camp. I really enjoy it. That's one of my very favorite things. I know that guy.
I know that guy and that guy.
He's back.
What's going on, everybody?
I don't know why you're under the comments. I'm sorry. I got to change.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, there we go. It's all in the way.
It's always an improvement of me when you can zoom out a little bit. So.
You don't want to do this? Oh, my head got huge. There we go.
Yeah. I don't think anyone wants this.
What's that show on ESPN with all the sportscasters?
First Take.
Yeah, that one. Oh.
The one where they always zoom in on everyone's face for no reason.
Sorry, folks. We're back to normal. Apologies. James, it's nice to see you. Thank you for the super chat. And it's nice to see you too. Both Andy and Pat mentioned McKinnon yesterday in today's presser. I admit that I'm not educating him. Just curious what you think of his role in the Chiefs. I'm scared for Darryl. I'm just going to put it that way.
Yeah,
McKinnon.
Darwin.
Darwin's. I'm not going to address Darwin. I'm worried Jerick McKinnon will bump Darryl for the backup spot.
Oh, okay.
McKinnon's a gifted receiver.
He is.
He's got really good quickness, runs good routes, good hands. He is a genuinely gifted receiver that would be a really good third down back on a lot of teams. And the Chiefs are no exception there. So that'll be tough for Darryl. Because I think McKinnon fits that role really nicely. And there were snaps last year at times where Clyde would go out to take a breather and they'd run a similar route or run a similar play. And the difference in explosion, and Darryl at top speed, he can book it, but the difference in explosion, that first 5 yards is so noticeable. And that's something that you don't have as much with McKinnon, who isn't as quick as Clyde, but he is fast.
Yeah.
And so that's that. Maybe Darryl still makes it as the third guy.
Oh, Darryl will be there for the third.
Yeah,
he's going to be the backup. I think Darwin's destined for the practice squad, and hey, that's just fine. James, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate it. It's good to see you. And Ben, thank you again.
Thank you, Ben.
I'm sure you're coming up with a question. We'll get to that, but I want to finish Seth's topic about your rest review of your offensive line. We've looked at them as well. So we got your big surprise. We kind of talked tackle. We don't need to talk about the left side at all, right? So is it Kree's job or isn't it? I'm
curious what Dan thinks.
Yeah.
I think he was drafted to be the starting center. That's what I think he was. And looking at his tape, I don't think there's any question. He was the best zone center in the draft. He's going to come in. Obviously, his wrestling background will help him move people as well. He's not just going to be a purely a zone center, but I think that he immediately improves not only the center position, but the entire offensive line in and of itself because of the way he can identify blitzes. I know that it's the NFL. It's a whole new scheme. It's a whole new offensive playbook. But he's been calling plays and calling things out of Oklahoma for 3 years. Their quarterbacks don't do that. That's something that a lot of centers don't come into the NFL knowing what to do. And I think that it's going to improve everybody, just matching up where you need to be on the offensive line in every single play.
Watching him, something that got pointed out to me by someone smarter than me.
I don't know.
That was like a very when you did that. All I could hear was Phineas and Ferb with the Perry the Platypus scenes. When you did that, all I could hear was doobie doobie doo ba doobie doobie doo.
Yes, we're dads, people.
So hey, look, Phineas and
Yeah.
Ferb rocks, and
It does rock.
Danny-
But I just want to let you know I watched that when I was a kid.
Look, Dan, we get it. You're young, all right? You're young, you're tall. Good for you. You work out. Take care of yourself. So the interesting thing when you watch Creed Humphrey play, from what you can tell, because these things are hard to know without being in the O-line room with them, you can almost see his post-snap processing in terms of when there's some movement up front or when the defensive line shifts in a way that's not expected, at least as far as you can tell, right? Again, these are tough things to gauge, but you can see examples of times where he's moving towards, you just see a defensive line shift or a stunt or something happen that you see him process very quickly and reestablish whoever needs to be blocked for, to just throw out all terminology. He seems to process very quickly. I can't think of any games that I watched. I mean, and I watched quite a few games, and I don't remember very many snaps where I was like, oh man, he missed that. I mean, it's hard to find guys like that coming out of college. And like Dan pointed out, calling out protections, and the level of experience he has is very hard to come by. And so I think he'll win the job. I've always said I don't think a guy like Austin Blythe that started 3 years in a row, I don't think guys like that go down without a fight. Mm-hmm. But I think, again, like we've talked about before, because Blythe is a new guy as well, there's not that same inherent advantage you'd often get with a veteran. So I think it's Creed's job to lose. And from everything I've seen, he hasn't done anything to lose it. He doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to lose a job, once he gets that opportunity.
Yeah. As far as I understand from people that I've talked to, Blythe has gotten 0 reps with the ones to this point.
Yep. I'm glad he's on the team. Make no mistake.
Absolutely.
A proven veteran center. And that's people ask about that. I'd be shocked if Blythe didn't make the roster.
Oh, yeah, he'll make it.
Yeah, you need a guy, and it's not just, I mean, he started at guard for 2 years too. He's good interior line depth that they got dirt cheap. Good for them.
Blythe is going to keep Creed from starting. Blythe is going to keep Allegretti or Wiley from being on the roster.
And I think it's going to be Wiley.
It could be.
He's had more years. That's just how it goes. The NFL is not a forgiving place. And with Allegretti, there's still more unknown there. Because that last year was just his first year. And it's hard not to say that he played at a relatively equivalent level to Wiley. And then that makes you wonder, because with Wiley, we've seen kind of some ups and downs. Well, with Allegretti, there's an unknown there. Can he slope upward, trend upward?
Malachi, thank you. You're right. Dre Baker is the guy that I forgot. I will just now refer to him as Fever.
I was busy tweeting. Right. And Ryan's sitting there like, that guy who plays for the Chiefs. What's his name?
The guy. The Georgia Bulldog.
Got the guy.
He does the stuff. Head, right?
He wears a, what do you call it, with the face mask on it. I don't really know what they call those things. I don't know why I gave you that accent.
I don't know, but I liked it.
It works though. It works for the best.
Yeah, it does. It's like Ryan. It's like I'm hearing him.
You guys are going to like this one because Drummer Dude asked a good question. If you're Brennan Daly, how would you use this defensive line group in knowing that you have the flexibility? And I'll start because these guys will not answer it this way. Thank you, Drummer Dude, for the super chat. And I would tie Steve Spagnuolo up in a closet and beat him with a bar soap until he decided he's going to play a 5-man front. And I would run a 46. I'd have the edges, and I'd run Naughty and Reed together with probably Chris inside, and let the other edge be the other edge, and run a 5-man front and destroy everyone all the time until the quarterbacks cry.
Well, in theory, that's a very good answer. Yeah. This is already very, very, very aggressive. There's nothing. The dude blitzes when he doesn't necessarily ever have to. In situations when you don't actually see defensive coordinators blitz, he's like, hey, let's just blitz everybody.
Why not? If you do it my way, he doesn't have to blitz. That's my whole
Ryan was that dude calling engage 8 and goal line defense back to back when he was playing Madden. He's like, 3rd and 10, goal line defense.
All day long.
That's funny.
Cover 2 in the back.
There's a few. They obviously have, either they are running the longest con ever, including on Chris Jones,
Right.
or they really are planning on running him out at defensive end. I'm curious how they have him do that, just because in terms of functional athleticism, it's going to be difficult if he gets out in space. That's just not the type of athlete he is. And that's not a knock on Jones. He's a very, very athletic 3-tech, but that's just a very different position. That said, he has other things that can compensate for that lack of athleticism in terms of, for a defensive end, he has extreme size, extreme length, extreme strength, and all those things can work out. If I were like a betting man, it would be kind of interesting if they think they can get Chris to play the style of defense they want at edge. Maybe you will see in base formations a lot of Jones, Reed, Noddy, Clark, which in terms of run defense, depending on discipline, like there aren't a lot of left tackles that are going to bowl over Chris Jones, right? In terms of setting the edge. And Reed is an underrated run defender, very not easy to move. And Noddy is obviously, he does what he does. And Clark, despite some of his issues in pass rushing in the last couple of years, he seems to have maintained the ability to set the edge well and that sort of stuff. So I'm guessing we're going to see some of that. But that's only because they keep insisting that that's what they're doing. And so I'm out thinking myself right now where it's like, yes, but that's precisely what they'd say if they were planning on playing him at 3-tech. And so I don't know.
So here's the thing. I've thought about this a good deal. And this is something that Chris even mentioned in his press conference. I really believe it's going to be a game-by-game decision. They're going to study the offensive line, find the weak points, because he talked about playing next to Frank and how they can manipulate defense or offensive lines that way. It's going to go a lot game to game, specifically, I think, when he's playing defensive end on first and second down. Ideally, you want him on obvious passing situations at 3-tech. That's where he's going to get the most pressure, the most consistent pressure, and the quickest pressure, most importantly. Now, again, like I said, you want to find those weak points. So say you have a right side or a left side that is weak. You're going to probably see Chris and Frank on that side and rushing specifically from there. But first down, obvious, I think that they're going to still mix him in at times as a quote unquote starting defensive end, maybe more of an actual tight or loose 5-tech closer to the inside shoulder of the tackle. But he's going to get more rotation than anything. I still think he's going to play the majority of his snaps at 3-tech, which is what I would personally do myself, because he's the second best defensive tackle in the NFL. I'm not going to take him away from that, just because I think that he can provide some level of competence at defensive end if we have multiple people we can rotate in and out, especially on run situations. So that's what I would think that they're going to eventually go to.
For Chris, I see two things, and I'll start with you, Seth. What is Chris Jones' best pass rush move? This is subjective. It's what you like the most, right?
This is like asking me to pick my favorite kid. I think probably I would call it almost a modified swim.
Okay, so you like the over?
Yeah, the over.
Okay, Dan. And
I'm going to go with something that's not actually a pass rush move. It's his get off. He is the fastest person 95% of the time in obvious pass situations off the snap. So especially on the interior, if it's over, it's under, it doesn't really matter. He's getting in between the double, because he's seeing doubles more than most people are at his position. He's getting in between them. So if he's going over under, that's just he's getting there quicker. So he's just beating him.
Well, this is my concern for Chris being out wider. I don't know that they schematically can leave him as a tight, just shaded off the 5. I think he's going to be out wider than like a 7. But that said, to me, that almost puts him a little bit of a disadvantage, because he has his bull rush, and that's fine. But right tackles are going to take on that bull better than the guards are, in my opinion, because they have more ground to give. But the thing for me, I like his rip the best, because if he can get to that outside shoulder with a punch,
slap. Ooh,
exactly. You hit that outside shoulder. For me, it's right now, and all through training camp, is Chris Jones is focused on the right tackle's shoulder on the outside, because if he can dominate that and come inside with his rip, he does have enough radius to turn. Because the only problem for Chris is when you're in there at 3 everything you do is so quick. Quickness wins the day because you don't have that far to go. He's got 2 or 3 more steps to make a successful pass rush from end as he did from tackle. That's my only concern for him.
I think that's a good call on his rip. Man, he's got so many.
Exactly.
His push-pull is brutal to watch.
Do you think some of that gets deflated, though, at end rather than a tackle?
I think it depends, because here's the problem that I see. With right tackles, they're going to have to decide what kind of set to take on him, right? So I see if a right tackle tries to jump him, which I think that would be insane. I don't think they will. I mean, I don't know what. You know what I'm going to do? I
want to see it.
Jones are just okay. Because so I think what you're going to see guys take with him a fair amount is these rather passive vertical sets, stealing themselves, knowing, okay, he's not a speed guy. He's not going to beat me around the edge. I'm just going to get ready to take it. I'm not sure how well they'll even then be able to, because I think that's where he's going to get that under the pads, then over around. I mean, just repeatedly. But maybe that's the optimist in me. I do like with his rip move, the fact that rather than having to just bend around the edge like most guys have to, you're going to see almost like, and it's an unfair comparison because this man's an alien. But when Donald rushes off the edge and he executes which honestly, Aaron Donald is so much better than the second best guy at his position. Yeah. It might be the widest gap in the NFL by a fair margin. Yeah. And that includes like Mahomes, who is great and better than everyone else. But Donald, I remember watching him against Joe Tooney, and Tooney did as well as I think he could have. I was so stressed out watching that because he's so insanely good. So what I was going to say with Donald, he can get bent around the edge because he's an alien, but he also, once he gets that rip, like you were kind of talking about, if he even gets half a man, because he's so strong as well, he can lean right into it and just it's almost like a combination of a rip and a bowl, which I know does not exist, but it should.
It's called the Jones.
Yeah, it's called the Jones. And with Jones's length, I think you might see some of that, almost like you could call it a modified long arm of some sort. And so I think there is some risk there that the get off won't help him as much from the outside as it will be from the inside, because it's not going to be as impressive on the outside. His best hope is that he's got enough of a get off that right tackles and left tackles can't cheat. Because if he can keep them from cheating and really setting up knowing that he has to come through them or go inside, if he really can threaten that outside edge, that's, I think, going to make the difference between whether this is just kind of a fun thing they're doing or, holy crap, did you hear that Jones had 19 and a half sacks this year?
Yeah.
And that's going to be the difference.
And that gets Frank over 10, in my opinion, if they have to give that attention to the other side.
And by the way, if Chris Jones has, 15 to 19 sacks this year, and we all know sacks are they're a weird stat.
They're volatile.
They're volatile. They rely on luck. But let's say he has the pressure rate commensurate with that to make it an accurate stat, and Clark does well with it. Man, the Chiefs are just a nightmare to play this year. Yep. An absolute nightmare.
I think if it works, they could both get 12.
Yeah, that's very realistic.
Kyle, you did miss a little bit. I think we all felt, we'll get Dan's opinion too, because we might have covered this before Dan was in. If Creed and Blythe both play up to their top caliber, neither of them is going anywhere. Neither will be trade bait. They will keep them both. Creed will start, in my opinion. Dan, are you with us?
Yeah, and then Blythe will be the starting right guard.
Okay, so you think he can beat out the other 18 competitors?
I think that if you're taking someone who just came off, a good season at center, but he was a good I believe it was right guard prior to being a center, you have LD2 coming off, his injury and then a time off. You have now Kyle Long coming off of an injury. You have and then backup players, and then you have a rookie who I know a lot of people are excited about. He's a very good prospect, but if Trey Smith is the starting right guard, especially week 1, I don't mean to be the downer. It's not going to be very good for him. You're going to see a lot of what the Buccaneers did in the Super Bowl to Trey Smith. They're going to put defensive ends on the inside and rush him. That's what they're going to do. And he doesn't have the footwork speed yet to counter that. That's the only problem. He's just got to work it up. It's not a big deal. But I do believe that Blythe, if they're both playing at a top starter caliber at center, one way or the other, I believe he'll play the starting right guard.
Okay. And we do all think all three will be on this roster, hands down. Mm-hmm. Guys, thank you for the super chats. We're going to keep going those when they pop up. And Brian, we're glad that you like it. I know it's mostly Seth, but we got to keep him intact here. So we're going to keep on him. Okay, so that said, are there any other pieces from your film review that we need to cover that maybe we haven't gotten to yet?
One thing that I'd love to talk about, I'm curious with you guys, is one of the things. So I did, storyline. I'll be watching, and that's for each part. Go read it. I think you'll enjoy it. Good viewer. So one thing I did at the very end is, what do I think the starting line would look like, and what's the best case scenario? And so I'm curious if you guys want to say yours too.
Sure.
Or I can start too. I mean, a little bit of both, and why.
I like Dan's thoughts so far. You start, Dan.
So ideally it would have been, we all know the left side, it's going to be Brown, Tooney, and then we have Creed. Ideally it would have been Long, I think, starting, but he got hurt. So now it's going to switch to Blythe. I think that he's the best option as of now. And then being the right tackle, it's going to be Mike Remmers, I think. That's just how it starts. Ideally, though, like you said, in an ideally position, you'd want Niang to beat him out.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my ideal lineup. But the way that I think it plays out is with Remmers at right tackle to start.
Okay.
My ideal is very similar. It would be Brown, Tooney, Creed. Ideally, I'm an LDT guy. I like what he brings. It would, to be ideal, he would have to be back to his previous athleticism.
Sure.
From 18.
Yeah.
That's a question mark.
Yep.
Also, ideally, Lucas Niang wins the tackle spot. If he does not, then it's how far back is Long. So I still feel that Long is against the other competition, a viable option out there. So I'll say LDT and Long for right now, and hopefully that Niang can take it over.
Sure. So I think the most likely group is Brown, Tooney, Humphrey, LDT, and Remmers, which is fairly similar with the thoughts you guys have given. Yeah. It's hard to unseat veterans in Reed's system. I'm hopeful LDT can kind of return to form to what he did in 2018 before he got hurt. Hopefully stay healthy. He's a smart offensive lineman. He's got, when healthy, a good combination of athleticism, but a little bit of power to go through it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also willing to play mean, which I've wondered, like, if he talks trash in the field with that accent, if that's confusing.
I bet you it is.
He says something to them and they're like, what?
Just say everything with qua.
Yeah. So that's what I think is the most likely. My dream, if I could pick, if someone said that this was the lineup and it happened for good reasons, my dream lineup would be Brown, Tooney, Humphrey, Smith, and Niang. Now, the reason for this is obvious. If Smith wins the right guard position, it's because he clearly outperforms everyone else.
Yeah.
There's not really he's not going to be a winner by default. Default would be if no one really shows up and plays real well, it'll probably be LDT.
Yeah.
Or like Wiley or something, right? Something that they're familiar with. If Smith would have to genuinely blow their minds to get that spot. And Niang, like you said, Ryan, that's the best case scenario, is that he can beat out Remmers, who was a decent right tackle. And so you've raised the ceiling for the offense there because he's going to have to earn it for the same reasons. Humphrey, I think, is going to win the job anyway. The reason that's the preference for me is because that means you've got all the young guys showing out early.
Yep.
Now, here's the thing, though. You're talking 3 rookies.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
All of whom surpassing expectations, except arguably Humphrey, who I think that would be meeting expectations.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And I can't remember the last time that 3 rookie offensive linemen started on a team and were like good.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason they see it. The only thing, though, I just can't stop thinking about this. The talent level of that lineup is absurd. The ceiling of it is absurd. It would also mean that, with the exception of Brown, who is nearly a lock to get a long-term deal, every one of your starters is either under contract or under team control in that scenario for 4 years.
And that's a significant thing. That's how you can balance having a superstar at one of the positions within the group. Just like Tyreek having one superstar, you have to have the lower salaries on the other guys in that group, or you get real top heavy real fast.
And that's, and so you can have, if you've got Humphrey, Smith, and Niang on rookie contracts, you can have 2 guys on big contracts because the rest you've got on rookie deals. And 4 years of continuity is huge. Now, keep in mind, that would mean 4 years without significant offensive line injuries. That never happens. But it's a nice dream to have.
Of course.
It is. And Avery, you're right. By season's end, that could very well be what it is. We're talking week 1, but that would be the progression that we're all looking for as well.
That's what they're looking for, clearly, by drafting these players.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would really take something for Reed to switch midseason, though, generally speaking, because he doesn't – I've noticed he doesn't seem to like to shake up the offensive line unless it becomes necessary. Like when Wisniewski in 19 when he was so clearly outplaying, I think it was Wiley at the time.
Yeah.
Wisniewski. I prefer Wisniewski.
No, you're right. That's not what I'm laughing at. I think you're being very kind.
That's the thing.
He's not big on switching things up, even when it looks like maybe that might be the way to go.
Yeah, he doesn't want to change it even unless I'm screaming in his face. But that's just one good question from the chat that I missed before that ties right into this. Real quick, how many do you think they keep on the 54? I guess it's going to be. That's the rumor today. Of the offensive line, do you think that they'll go to 10? Dan?
Oh, I just wanted to say he was looking, so I was like, who's going to answer the question? Yes. No, I think they will stick with 9 and take as many as they can to the practice squad. But obviously, we saw now today with the waiving of Martinez Rankin that they're already going through some of the process to clean out some of these offensive linemen. They've had Rankin for a little while now. You've seen what he's had to offer, and they decided it's not enough, which sorry, guys, I tried to tell you earlier we didn't know what he was because he wasn't getting playing time. So, but yeah, that's just kind of how it is. So I do believe 9 is what they're going to end up with. 10, especially with the extra slot now, if it goes 54, 10 is definitely a possibility.
Seth, what do you think?
I feel like with all those question marks at guard, I feel like 10 is a legitimate possibility, especially after what they saw happen. Now, you can't let unprecedented circumstances dictate future, movement. That said, offensive line usually struggles with injuries, and I don't want another season derailed by that. And so if by keeping 10, you can keep one more guy that you're at least somewhat confident in, it seems worth it to me. I know it just creates problems in terms of special teams and that kind of stuff because, generally speaking, you want like a wide receiver or a linebacker or a running back, someone who can run a little more.
Special teams guys.
Yeah. Well, Creed Humphrey's pretty athletic. Creed Humphrey, gunner on special teams. That could be fun.
I am pretty certain if it remains at 53 and we don't get the extra guy that it's a 9-man line because I just don't think Andy will pull the trigger on having less receivers or DBs. If it is 54 or more, I think they keep the extra guy. And maybe that's just for week 1 or 2 and then they get a trade off the books. I don't know.
Right.
I do think they will look to move talent because they have a plethora at the offensive line room. So there's no way around that. Justin, we'll read. Good question for these guys. We'll read. Ever win the coach of the year again? He went 14-2, still didn't get it. I think Andy's expectations are a lot higher than they used to be in for the average coach. Seth, do you think he can do it though?
I don't know. I think he should be in consideration. I think he should have won it in 2019. I think he should have been in consideration in 2020. I think he should have maybe won it in 2018. I mean, these last 3 years, he's done an unbelievable job. But the reality is he's been around a long time. And the longer you've been around, the more it's generally acknowledged that you're one of the best to ever do it. And that's the conversation with Andy Reid has changed since the Super Bowl, that now he's getting a lot more love as one of the best to ever do it. People that's just not, it's going to be, some new coach that helps a team turn around or whatever. And that's really unfortunate. I think the Chiefs would have to have, because it's generally awarded before the end of the season, right? With the playoffs. So you'd think if he was going to win it, it might have been last year because they really dominated the regular season. I just don't know if there's ever going to be a scenario unless they go undefeated or something or break all kinds of records.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought too. He's fighting himself as far as I'm concerned. You all right there, Dan?
Yeah, here's a little tidbit of information. Bill Belichick has won the award 3 times. The last time was in 2010. Andy Reid's got almost no shot at winning it again because excellence just gets tiring for a lot of voters, and they don't want that to continuously be the focal point.
Yeah. Daryl, you have a great point here, folks. almost 400 of us in here at the hour point. You guys have been great. If you could do one other thing for us since you're still here, if you click that thumbs up, that will help more Chiefs fans find us.
Please.
One, like Seth said, one thing. So, and good question, Josh. Thank you for the super chat. Do you think Durant makes the roster? Well, he just beat out Martinez Rankin, so he's one step closer.
That's step one.
And I will say this: the Chiefs like him more than I do. They put him in, and maybe he has a shot at being a backup tackle.
That's the only shot right now he's going to have, because left tackle, the backup left tackle spot is up.
It was
for
Rankin
grabs.
until today.
It's up for grabs. It seems they're just kind of like, oh, we don't necessarily have somebody. So,
Seth, did you look at him in your roundup? Did you get any
I did
kind
not.
of? Okay, you didn't get any kind of.
He didn't even get listed. I'm going to be honest.
That's cool. That's cool.
And that's just kind of shows where he's at right now.
Yeah.
That's tough. He would have to really show up and show out to make the roster.
I'll say this: he and Prince Tegumanago are both practice squad eligible, you guys. So don't be surprised if they're there and they get pulled up if needed. That's what I would do if I were them. Drummer Dude, thank you again. That's like the third great question and super chat. We appreciate it. Do you guys think that Andy Reid retires, Clark Hunt will let Veach pick the next head coach, or do you think that the guys will promote from within? I think Brett Veach will have a serious impact on it, but I don't think Clark Hunt is going to bow out and just let things happen.
Yeah. I agree.
I don't think so.
I'm guessing they'll promote from within,
Mm-hmm.
barring not having anyone appropriate. You know, we'll kind of see. I mean, Andy's always got a future head coach because Bieniemy has deserved a shot for a few years now. But I mean, there's already been getting a lot of talk about Kafka now at this point. Yeah, and I think he's going to get a shot at some point here too.
And your guys, Ted at Athletic, talked to him this week, right?
Yes. Ted Wynn wrote about him. Excellent piece.
That's right. I'll do it all for you, man. It's okay. Producers, if you need somebody at the Athletic that can throw things out, let me know. I will also say this: in 2028, I expect the Chiefs to bring Eric Bieniemy back to Kansas City as their head coach.
I can see that.
That's my thought. I think he gets a job in the meantime.
Let's hope so.
Kafka might as well. But I do think Eric needs to go somewhere else and be a head coach first. I don't think it's a roll right into that job, in my opinion.
And I think Andy Reid's going to be playing for a minute, or coaching for a minute. I think he's having the time of his life. Can you imagine getting to draw plays for Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelce? Like, that's got to be so much fun.
I mean, I made it through what called Foles Part 1. He deserves this,
Yeah, I mean, there's not many other coaches that deserve it and deserve the rebirth that Patrick Mahomes has given him. He had a shot with Donovan McNabb, and then the quarterback tree just kind of fell off after that. And now he's finally got someone who he has fun coaching and drawing up plays for. You can see he feels like he's 10, 15 years younger than he was before he came to Kansas City. So it's been great to see him do this. It's been great.
I agree. Brad Renner, thank you very much. Glad that you enjoy it. Glad you all enjoy it. We certainly do. We could do this for the next 3 hours if we didn't have spouses.
It's very true.
But that's the reality. So I think at that point, we'll lock it up. I think Seth's going to be on Locked On Chiefs with me tomorrow as well. So you guys check that out, and we'll be back with our normal schedule. Dan, thanks for making it.
No problem. I always have fun talking with you guys.
Folks, we present you the Chief in the North. Here, we'll even do this. Ooh. Because it is Thursday. Seth, would you take us out of here in your Play-Doh moment?
It's been a journey. We laughed. We cried. Mostly Ryan cried over the idea of us not running the ball 60 times a game. But we here at RGR Football and with the Chief of the North, we can't thank you guys enough for listening. It is an awesome week to be a Chiefs fan. I can't wait to do this again next week. Ryan, Dan, see you guys next week. This has been awesome.
All right. Night, folks.